All right, we're back. We're going to talk about personal irresponsibility on my part for not posting the stream sooner. No, personal responsibility. We've got our sample, so we're good to go there. We've got our Muppet cup, right? Full of sample. Have you considered? Have you considered buying a cup? Because you can, and they're awesome. Things continue to get weirder and weirder in the world. I don't know why or how, but they're doing it quite nicely, I must admit. Stranger and stranger. Yeah, it just things continue to get more chaotic and people continue to get more confused about the chaos. And that's kind of par for the course. I'm hearing a lot more framing out there from people on different things like, oh, I have an explanation. Oh, I have an explanation. And you're going to hear a lot more of that. Different people with different explanations for the same thing because everyone's confused and chaos is everywhere. And there's basically an infinite number of explanations. And that's a problem. But yeah, I've just been noticing so many patterns and a lot of things are becoming more clear, right? But more clearly chaotic and not clear in the resolution sense. That's where people are sort of confused, right? And so, yeah, you have to kind of roll with the punches. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about personal responsibility. So, we'll see. But let's jump into personal responsibility. So, it's sort of difficult in a way because I think it's one of those tangential topics that comes up with the very important people who are talking about very important things. And I don't necessarily disagree or anything, but also we're living in the age where people fail to define their terms. And, we should start with what is personal? What do we mean when we're using the word personal? What the hell are we even talking about? And the thing is, something that's personal is something connected to you. It relates to your personhood. It has a quality that is unique relative to your personhood. That's what personal means. There's already a relationship there. Whether you want there to be or not is not relevant. The world just doesn't care about you. The world doesn't even know about you at the end of the day. Sorry. And some things are related to you. They might even be relatives that are terrible people. It might be your relationship to oxygen or gravity or the sun, which you need or you'll die. There's all kinds of things that have a relationship to you that relates to you uniquely, right? Because you're not an individual, that's impossible, but you are a unique person, right? And that's what's important. And then that leads us to what is responsibility, right? Well, this has to do with responding to something, right? Which means you care about it in some sense, And remember that a lot of people throw around the word love, and what they're actually talking about is care. Good to know, right? And so you care about these things. So responsibility is the response to something in the world that you care about, or maybe it cares about you and you're forced to respond that way. So there's a caring, a quality relationship, and you. That could be another person, it could be something in nature, it could be something that you built, right? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about personal responsibility. And hopefully that's clear and everybody can more appreciate the depth of the issue here and understand, right? So why is this concept of personal responsibility important? Like what's going on with this? Why is this even something that I'll say I'm bringing up? And I would say it's because responsibility is a thing in the world, right? It's something that you kind of can't get around, right? You have to take some responsibility. But when you try to take responsibility for the wrong thing, when you try to respond to the wrong things, people get upset, right? And this is because you're destroying the world for real. When you're trying to respond to the wrong things, you're trying to take responsibility, caring about the wrong things, everything gets worse. So, and I'm serious about this now, right? When you try to take responsibility for, I don't know, the temperature of the whole planet, right? All the weather in all of the planet. They call that climate. I don't know why. Seriously, like I don't know what they're talking about. And you call that like climate change or something, you wreck the world. I mean, that's as clear as day. Now, we can go on and on and on about numerous conspiracy theories about doing it deliberately, right? And I'm not saying there isn't a deliberate component. There is. There are several deliberate components, but they don't all have the same goal. Al Gore was pretty clear. I saw his emails myself. They got dumped, leaked decades ago at this point. He wanted 1% of the $1 trillion energy market. Fair enough. At least we know what his goal was. Why they listened to him after those emails got dumped, I'll never know. But we live in the age of gnosis, and knowledge doesn't do what you think it does. So the fact that we know this didn't stop anybody from listening to that idiot when we knew he was just a greedy bastard, he and his friends. So that's the problem. You're caring about something you shouldn't care about because you don't have any control over it usually, right? You don't have any skin in the game with it either, right? It doesn't really matter who wins the Israeli-Gaza conflict or the Ukraine war or any number of wars on the continent of Africa that nobody ever talks about for some reason, right? Yeah, I mean, if you worry about these things that are far away, like these wars, you are taking your time, energy, and attention, your responsibility away from the things and people nearest you. And that's why personal responsibility is important, because you don't want to use up your responsibility on things that aren't the most important things to you. And that's where people are confused. And that's why this is an issue that comes up over and over and over again. To some extent, you could easily couch this as the definite solution to all the ills we're having today. If more people took more personal responsibility, a lot of our problems would be solved overnight. That is technically correct. Unfortunately, you can't force people to be more personally responsible. Like if you had to force them, it wouldn't be personal responsibility anymore. So it's true, but unhelpful. This is why in the age of gnosis, people don't understand truth doesn't do anything in the world. There's lots of truths. Most of them are unimportant or uninteresting. And the fact that they exist is Tuesday. And Tuesday happened many times. So I don't know why you think that has an effect on the world. It doesn't. And people seeing it doesn't either. Pointing at something like truth as a solution to a problem is a good way to misunderstand personal responsibility. Because now you are not responsible. You're taking responsibility away from you to make the world a better place and putting it on truth, which has no agency to make the world a better place. And you're saying, yeah, but those other agents would act according to the truth, which is just observably false. People ignore the truth all the time in all sorts of ways. Guess we're blind to the truth of what I just said. And that's because we're not taking personal responsibility. Like when you're taking personal responsibility, I think Jocko Willink sort of couches this as extreme ownership. That is a different mode of sort of interacting in the world. And it's sort of important to realize that. Like when you take personal responsibility, you are interfacing with the world in a very different fashion than when you don't. That is very much Jocko Willink's point, by the way. And again, this is about what's nearest to you, what's dearest to you, not just nearest, what you find the most important, the most relevant in the moment. And the thing is, people try to get around personal responsibility all the time. Sure, I get it. It's work. It's work you don't want to do, right? There's work you want to do and work you don't want to do. And when other people take responsibility and you don't, you get upset because you're now judged by their action, by their responsibility. because you see their caring, their responsive caring in the world, right? So they're usually succeeding at that, right? So there's a success that you're also upset about because that judges you, and they're making some kind of sacrifice. And a lot of people think, well, if you didn't make that sacrifice for the thing closest to you, for the things that you care about, you could make a sacrifice for the climate or for the war in Ukraine. And I guess that's technically true, but that makes them bad people, so don't listen to them, right? And the connectedness of those people that are taking personal responsibility judges you because we're all connected. And that judgment is as certain and inevitable as the pull of gravity. It's as inevitable as the sun rising in the east. It's as inevitable as your need to breathe. And what that means is that your lack of personal responsibility is judging you. And you have been found lacking. And this is, one of the sort of reasons why people hate success, as my good friend Joey has taught me. There's a lot of people that hate success because if anybody's successful and they're not, A, they're not equal. That's terrible. They're lesser automatically, right? And B, they could have that, but for their misaligned passions. And that's a problem. I mean, this is why Marxism leads to lowest common denominator, right? Every single time, because to make everybody equal, we all basically have to be dead. That's the only time we're equal. Sorry, it just is, right? And the thing is, when you feel judged by somebody else taking responsibility, when you feel judged by seeing somebody who's personally responsible, when you're not being personally responsible, you did that to yourself. No one did that to you. There's no reason for the anger. No one did that to you. You did that to you. That's it. The world exists, right? It's the result of living in a world that isn't static. It isn't disconnected. It's a world where you aren't an individual and the world actually exists. And because it exists and you're in it, judgment will follow. It's not optional. You will be judged by the world in which you exist because you exist there. You are in contrast, as are many other things, to that world. You don't have to be. You could do some cooperative processing and get along. Wouldn't that be better? And so, what does it look like to have a lack of personal responsibility? Well, usually your life's a mess. Your room's not clean. You don't have your life together. You don't have it together. You're not with it. You're not able to execute on anything. Because part of personal responsibility is maintaining the things around you so that not you can use them right away because you can't use most things right away, so that they're ready for you to use when they're needed. And that's super important. And people don't sort of appreciate that. But that's what a lack of personal responsibility gets you. It gets you a chaotic life. It gets you a life where you're untethered, you're indomicide, you're not doing well, you're not able to pull yourself up by your bootstraps because pulling yourself up by your bootstraps doesn't work when you're being irresponsible. And I think a lot of this lack of personal responsibility comes from this crappy individualism frame, right? You're not an individual. But do you know what it is to be a person connected to yourself, connected to nature, connected to others, and connected to the ineffable highest thing? A person is connected to the rest of the world. That's why you need to respond to those relationships in a caring way. And when you can't respond to the relationships that touch your person, or are wrapped up in your personhood, you lack personal responsibility. And that's a problem. People are trying to be individuals. They don't know what it is to be a person. They don't know what it is to be connected to the world. They don't know what it is that the world is pre-existing them and much larger than them and needs your help. Like, the world cannot survive without people, contrary to the so-called scientific worldview, which was not the scientific worldview until extraordinarily recently. Ask me how I know. And the thing is, if there's no relationship, there's no responsibility required. And I mentioned this earlier. If you're spending your time, energy, and attention on things you're not related to, like the climate, whatever that means, definitions matter a lot, actually. Or the Ukraine war. I'm not related to the war in Ukraine or any of the wars on the African continent that nobody talks about, or the Uyghurs in China. I have no relationship to them. I have no responsibility or ability to respond to those things. If I try, I end up probably getting taken advantage of, doing very little actual good for a hell of a lot of effort, and ignoring the things that I am directly responsible for, that I am connected to locally. That's why you have to kind of understand what your relationships are, what you're closely related to, and what the quality of those relationships are, so that you can respond to them personally with proper orientation in the world. And, a lot of this just sounds like, well, what are we really talking about here, right? We're really talking about fundamentally a disconnectedness. We're talking about your disconnectedness to the world. That's what we're talking about. And what is that? To some extent, any, it doesn't have to be a full disconnectedness. Any failure to recognize the quality of your relationships, that's a disconnectedness. I refer to this as the intimacy crisis. That's part of the intimacy crisis. It's very hard to have personal responsibility in an intimacy crisis. And we are in the intimacy crisis. It's a big problem. Like, we don't understand the qualities of the relationships around us. We don't even understand that relationships have qualities. We think there's something like trade, or there's something like how we interact or transact. And it's like, oh my goodness, I don't have transactions with my best friend who I had to talk to last night while the moon was getting covered by whatever the moon was getting covered by. Did not turn red here, by the way. But we did have clear skies, so that was good. And the thing is, as Jordan Peterson talks about, where responsibility has been neglected, opportunity lies. And there's a couple ways to look at this, right? Like, you have an opportunity to be better by taking personal responsibility. If you don't take responsibility to the things closest to you, somebody else will take that opportunity. And they're basically going to control your life. And that happens. So you should think very carefully about this. This is not a trivial problem where it's like, oh, people just need to be more responsible. It's like, no. Also, being more responsible might put you in the climate change camp, or whatever foreign war camp, rather than orienting you towards the things that you have quality relationships with. And again, it's good to know when I'm not paying attention to the things that I'm closely related to, and someone else steps in and takes that responsibility, I'm screwed. Good to think about. Because someone else may take that responsibility, and you'll lose all of the opportunity that lies in the responsibility and can't be got at any other way. There's a lot of people will try to hack their way around it or find a loophole, or no, that's not going to happen. You need personal responsibility. And that's where all the opportunity is, in responsibility. The biggest potential that you have in this world lies with thing you have the most control over, which is you. So get that in order first, and the rest will follow. How do we recognize somebody who is not being personally responsible? Maybe they don't have the right relationship with the world. Well, one way is people who are not personally responsible will give credit only to themselves for anything that happens around them that they were involved in. They won't talk about the role of other people. They're not able to be personally responsible because they're not responding to the quality of the relationship. They're relating everything back to themselves. That's a red flag. We could go with narcissism on that if you'd like. That's fine. It's definitely a red flag. When you have somebody that's doing something, we'll say rent free, right? Or is parasitic, they are feigning responsibility without sacrifice. But of course, if you're not sacrificing at least your time, energy, and attention, you're not responding in any reasonable way. And you can't be responsible without making a sacrifice. It's not possible. It's not a thing that you can do in the world. Right? It's not optional. So, how do you take personal responsibility? Well, first, recognize what you are connected to. All the things you have a relationship with, whether we'll say voluntarily or not. Because again, you were born into a world and that happened to you. Sorry. Happened to all of us, by the way. So don't cry too much. It's not like you're special because you're not. You might be unique, but you're not special. But you need to know what's connected to you and what you're connected to. Like you need to know that. You need to know how it works. You need to know something about the qualities of that relationship and what quality is that relationship for each of those things. But that's going to be insufficient because you haven't noticed up until this point, until I mentioned it. That might be a hint at how much you suck. Ask others, right? Where you can do more. Say in your own life, where do you think I could do more in my own life to make my life better? They'll tell you. One or two of them might be wrong, by the way, but what do you want me to do? It's not a perfect world, and you're not a perfect person, and the person you ask is not a perfect person. It's imperfection all the way down. Sucks. Other people will tell you, well, this is what you could do. You could probably do more here, right? And that's very generous of them. Interact with the things closest to you first. Get them out of the way. Take care of them. Things that are furthest from you, interact with last. Look, maybe you have enough bandwidth to organize a food drive for Ukraine. I don't know. But you only do that after all the closest connections are taken care of. Your family and your friends, and, the people in your neighborhood and the people that need you around the corner. And then last, you worry about the things that are halfway across the world. Engage in a process of contemplating where you are in the world. Where are you in the world? I don't know. Do you? That'll help you figure out what you're closest to. And contemplation time works. It's not a complete answer, but it adds some contrast. And the thing is, then you can, with those two pieces of information, where you are in the world and what are you closest to, right? You can start looking at the relationships. It's like, oh, what is the quality of the relationship to this thing that's close to me? And then you can evaluate if the things you're giving your time, energy, and attention to are still worth your time, energy, and attention. And oftentimes people find out they're not. And they reorganize their priorities, right? Or they upgrade their relevance realization, or they change the importance of the items around them as the result of the contrast of saying, where am I in the world? What's closest to me? What are the qualities of those relationships? And actually thinking that through. Maybe you write it down. I don't know. Then you need to go to people again and ask them, hey, is there anything I missed? What can I do for you? I was talking to my buddy last night. His father, for about a year now, has been having memory problems. So I was a little concerned, and there was a little bit of lull in the conversation. And I was like, how's your dad doing? He's like, he's great. And I was like, excuse me? Like, we've been talking about whether or not you had to go out there and take care of him at some point in the near future. And now he's great. So it turns out his uncle, his father's brother, is not doing well and has full blown Alzheimer's, which is what he was worried his father was going to have. And he's been taking care of him. And in that process, he's gotten better with his own memory problems. Very mysterious. Look, these are just a few thoughts to get you started on your journey of personal responsibility.